Thank you, Cindy. So you all, many of you know that I was up at Unity of Fairfax in Northern Virginia last week, and one of the things that I realized is our music program is better than theirs. In large measure because of Cindy. We've had the pleasure of her being here so very many times over the past several weeks. And I know, and Cindy knows, but you guys don't know, that she won't be with us because of travel and other commitments, probably until, I think, mid-May at this point. So you might want to make a point, as I'm doing right now, of realizing what a huge blessing she is to us.
And you to me.
We are a blessing, aren't we? Mm-hmm. So, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Reverend Linda Zupan, the Associate Minister here at Crystal Coast Unity. And today we're going to continue delving into the book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, written by Stephen Post and Jill Niemark. Dr. Post, the primary author, is a bioethicist and a medical professor at Case Western Reserve University in Ohio. And for our purposes, perhaps more importantly, he's also the president of the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love that was founded in 2001. The premise and the promise of this book is the simple act of giving leads to a longer, happier, healthier life. The book contains dozens of stories about individuals whose lives illustrate giving in large and small measures. And it also reports on a vast array of research findings supporting this claim. But perhaps most importantly for us, Why Good Things Happen to Good People offers 10 ways to stretch our capacity to give and to love. It identifies specific practices that we can use to live the truth we know. Last Sunday, Charlie Curtis covered the way of celebration and the way of generativity. I listened to that talk. Thank you, Charlie. It was a gift. It was a gift. Our focus this morning is on the next two chapters, the way of forgiveness and the way of courage. 2 more ways of giving, 2 more ways of loving. So there is freedom in forgiveness. Dr. Post opens the chapter, The Way of Forgiveness, with one story of a woman who alchemized the pain of her incredibly brutal early years, can't really call them a childhood in her case, into the joy of dedicating her life to helping street children in Vietnam and Mongolia. And obviously this is one of those very large life examples, and it's an amazing transformation. And I admit that for me, it's a bit intimidating, because it's so tempting to compare my story with others. And when I do, in stories like this, my obstacles, my pain falls very short in that analysis. And if you share my temptation to compare and to lose, I remind you, as I remind myself, that we each have our own personal pain and our own personal path to walk. And pain is pain, period. So the peace that comes with forgiveness, the freedom that we can experience in forgiving ourselves and others, is a worthwhile pursuit. In my life, forgiveness, like every other change, begins one step at a time, anyway. And generally, they are small steps that I repeat over and over and over. Dr. Post cites research studies that support physical and emotional benefits, and he lists 5 high-level examples. Forgiving others improves health and well-being more than being forgiven. Forgiveness alleviates depression, even in war-torn areas and impoverished inner-city neighborhoods. Forgiveness boosts mood, and it reduces anger, anxiety, and hostility. Forgiveness lowers stress hormones. And forgiveness preserves close relationships. Interesting, isn't it? That research confirms what we have known experientially for millennia, that learning to forgive is good for our emotional and physical well-being and for our connection to others. So if it's such a good thing, why don't we more easily forgive? Perhaps the largest barrier to forgiveness is misunderstanding of what it is. Often we confuse forgiving with forgetting, with condoning or pardoning, with foregoing reparation or justice, with reconciling, with excusing, with trusting without boundaries. Forgiveness is not necessarily any of these things. Some erroneously believe that forgiving gives away power and allows others to have their way. In contrast, many who have forgiven report the act as one of power and courage, choice and control. The first of 9 lessons from the frontiers of research that Dr. Post offers is find out what forgiveness really means. Explore what research tells us, and particularly work with what forgiveness means to you. One definition that especially resonates with Dr. Post was coined by the psychologists Michael McCullough and Giacomo Bono of the University of Miami. Forgiveness is the other side of gratitude. Dr. Post reminds us that forgiving is not a simple act, nor a one-time gesture. Further, our expression of forgiveness is inevitably shaped by our personal experience. This means it will change and morph through our lifetime. It is vitally important to find our own path to forgiveness and to forgive in our own time. Lesson 2 is learn the limits of a grudge. Yes, there is evolutionary and protective value to anger. It is important to feel our feelings and to honor them. Over time, though, holding on to those feelings begins to erode our sense of well-being and power. And so understanding when and how to release the pain and upset is a vital step in releasing the weight of accumulated grievances. Lesson 3 is first forgive yourself. Dr. Post writes, quote, "The greatest challenge in life is forgiving ourselves, and it's actually harder than forgiving others," end quote. As with the other lessons, specific practices and tools are offered. Here, one of those practices is accept resistance until it melts away. Simple, elegant, powerful, this practice of acceptance. In my experience, acceptance means that I honor exactly where I am at the moment. Acceptance means I give myself permission to be imperfect in the moment. And acceptance then paves the way for loving myself and others. Lesson 4 focuses on seeing forgiveness as good medicine. Those physical and emotional benefits I spoke of just a few moments ago. Research documents lessening of depression, anxiety, hostility, narcissistic, or exploitative behaviors, as well as lowered blood pressure readings. Those who learn and practice forgiveness techniques report a heightened sense of self-acceptance and purpose, as well as peace, hope, ease, connection, and renewed faith. Lesson 5 tells us to choose to preserve our ties to family, friends, and to ongoing relationships with others. Dr. Post writes that as we age, we become more forgiving and value our connections more. Lesson 6 offers shift your perspective. In a nod to the possibility that some wrongs are seemingly beyond the human capacity to forgive, Dr. Post writes of a Holocaust survivor who lost his entire family to the Nazi slaughter and bore the emotional scars for decades. When we find it is too soon to forgive, we can mitigate the harm of holding on to our anger and hurt by shifting our focus to gratitude. This shift does not require forgiveness, and the gratitude does not replace forgiveness. It simply means we move our attention to another area of our life when we notice the unpleasant effects of thinking about those harmful acts. Lesson 7 reminds us that forgiveness is a process. It is not a once and done kind of thing. The idea that it might be is a common misunderstanding. My personal experience and what I have observed of participants in workshops that I've facilitated is that there is often a deeper layer that we can uncover and more to learn about what we are forgiving. Small, regular steps lead to big releases and unexpected transformation, especially in our relationship with self. Lesson 8 describes the power of apology. If you have been on either side of a heartfelt, sincere offering of an apology, you know it can wash away resentment and bitterness. To be effective, though, it must be genuine. Dr. Post writes, quote, "The key to apology, however, is remorse. Remorse truly conveys distress, self-awareness, and regret. It also elicits empathy in the hurt person," end quote. Lesson 9, the final lesson in this chapter, is become the good you wish to find. To illustrate this lesson, I offer you a personal story. The first Unity class I attended 22 years ago was on Unity's 5 basic principles. I don't remember everyone who was there, but I do remember one woman in particular. Part of what we did in that class was to share about our personal spiritual journey. This woman spoke of her gratitude for her childhood religious experience in the Catholic Church, saying that although it no longer served her spiritual needs, she was grateful for the religious grounding it gave her. She appreciated the ritual and the beauty. Catholicism was my childhood religion too, but my feelings were not gratitude. They were hurt and anger, specifically over my judgment about how women were treated by the church. I remember thinking to myself, someday I want to be able to be grateful like she is. This woman just exudes peace and joy and love. I want that. Years later, and I do mean 5 or 6 years later, I was part of a reconciliation weekend at a Catholic retreat house. I had participated with this group several times before and always had carried my hurt and resentment toward the church into the weekends. This time, though, I realized that my primary emotion was gratitude. Gratitude for the beauty of the Catholic rituals, gratitude for the love I felt in that place of peace and joy, gratitude for the connection with that amazing group of people. Looking back, I am certain that it was my desire in that unity class, listening to my new friend talk of her gratitude for her childhood faith experiences, that opened the way for mine. To this day, I am deeply grateful. I had not been consciously aware of setting an intention that evening in class. Nevertheless, I received the benefits. My subconscious knew, my heart knew, and had been drawing my good to me for all those many years until I suddenly experienced the grace of gratitude. I became the good I wished to find, and now I share that good with you. The way of forgiveness is a powerful gift for ourselves and others. I invite you, actually, I urge you to explore it. And now we turn to the way of courage. Dr. Post writes, quote, "Courage is love as action, love on her silver steed, forcing change in the world, rising to challenges, negotiating life with skill, and confronting others with care and wisdom. The qualities that courage draws upon, hardiness and resilience, as well as the ability to bend and alter course when faced with difficulty, to commit oneself to a cause, and to find inner power during times of pain, are all associated with mental health. We need a deep tensile strength to face the tough times in life, to speak out persuasively against injustice, and above all, to love others wisely and well. To love at all is a risk that requires courage. We risk our safety, letting ourselves be raw and vulnerable. We accept our share of compromise and weather disappointment and despair, and above all, we are willing to confront a loved one, even if what we need to say is not easy or kind. Dr. Post continues, courage takes many forms. For some, it means changing the world, even risking one's life to do so. For others, it requires standing up for oneself, speaking out in your own relationships about what you need, setting boundaries. For still others, it's the bravery to face each day in spite of difficulties, either psychological, physical, or economic. For all of us, it means developing the resilience and optimism to handle tough circumstances and emerge stronger and wiser. From the landscape of the world to our interior landscape, courage is a necessity and can be a powerful way of giving." End quote. Some of the research outcomes that Dr. Post offers about courage and its benefits in life are: brave acts are rewarding. According to one study of whistleblowers, 90% said they would do it again if they had the chance. People who witness bravery feel inspired to act courageously themselves. The willingness and ability to promote justice is linked with the ability to resolve conflicts. Hardiness is the core trait of courageous individuals. Courage often requires that people reach a turning point at which they deconstruct their sense of self and reconstruct it around altered priorities. And finally, courage begets joy and connection. In this chapter, Dr. Post offers us 5 lessons from the frontiers of research. The first lesson is courage comes in many forms. We can display bravery